Okay, so today's topic is about subcutaneous mycosis. By this time, you must be familiar with the term mycosis, which means study of fungi, and also about the superficial mycosis. Today, I will be taking up subcutaneous mycosis. Before understanding subcutaneous mycosis, you must understand the various layers of human skin. In the diagram on the right side, you can see the various layers of human skin. The topmost and the superficial layer is epidermis, which contains stratum corneum, followed by granular cell layer and spinous layer. Below this we have basal cell layer, which has sebaceous glands. Now below the epidermis layer, there is the dermis layer, which has sweat glands, nerves, hair follicles, and below or beneath the dermis layer, we have subcutaneous tissue, which has artery, vein, and various fat tissue. Now, what do you understand by subcutaneous mycosis? So, mycosis, which is subcutaneous mycosis, is when it is caused by fungi which grow in soil and vegetation and is introduced into skin and subcutaneous tissue through trauma. So, there is always a history of implantation injury or inoculation injury or accidental injury of saprobic fungi, contaminated fungi present in the soil or vegetation, which enters through the skin and penetrates deeper into the subcutaneous tissue and causes infection. Now, what are the various conditions in which you will find subcutaneous mycosis? This includes mycetoma, chromoblastomycosis, porotrichosis, and rhinosporidiosis. Starting with the mycetoma, which is also known as meduromycosis or more commonly as Madura foot. It is a slowly progressive chronic granulomatous infection of skin and subcutaneous tissue. It usually affects the foot and rarely the other parts of the body. It was first reported by Gill in 1842 from Madurai, South India, and Carter in 1862. In 60, he established the fungal origin of this disease. It is known as Madura foot or Madura mycosis because it was first reported from Madura region of India. It is distributed more commonly in tropical countries and it is quite common in Tamil Nadu. Now, where you will find mycetoma more common? It is more common or prevalent in rural areas, in farmers, people who work in agricultural lands or city parks. Basically, they have a tendency to walk barefoot. So, this tendency is more common in rural areas. That is why it is more prevalent there. So, feet is the most common site for infection and account for at least 2/3 of the cases. Apart from this, it can involve other sites also like lower legs, hands, head, neck, chest, shoulder and arms. Now, how does the mycetoma take place? What is the pathogenesis behind the mycetoma? So basically, the infection starts with the injury, which is accidental injury or there is a minor trauma, and after this it enters the skin. Supposedly it affects the foot. There would be subcutaneous localized swelling of the foot, which will become enlarged and it will go deeper into the tissues and will produce characteristic abscess. Now, this abscess will burst with formation of chronic multiple sinuses, discharging viscid seropurulent fluid containing granules. The color and consistency of these granules vary with the different causative agents. So, if you see in this, there is the mycetoma is characterized by a triad, which is characterized by a typical clinical presentation. And it has three typical characteristics. First is there would be tumefaction. Tumefaction means there would be swelling of the tissue which is involved. And second is there is a formation of chronic multiple sinuses. And third thing is that these discharging sinuses will contain a number of granules or grains in this. And these grains or granules, they are specific in their shape, in their size, in their texture, and in their color. So this given rough idea about what would be the causative agent of mycetoma, as it is caused by both bacterial as well as fungi. Clinically, this is a picture of foot which is affected, and you can see the opening sinuses having discharge in this, and there is a swelling also present there. This also shows swelling, and then there is discharging sinus, and there is also oozing of the discharge. This shows the mycetoma of hand and head. Etiology. Now this mycetoma can be caused by bacteria also and also by the fungi. So it is caused by, when it is caused by bacteria, it is called actinomycetoma, and when it is caused by true fungi, it is called eumycetoma. The importance of grains is that the color of the grain indicates whether it is of bacterial origin or fungal origin, and it helps in identifying to some extent what would be the possible causative agent. So under eumycetoma, you will see that Acremonium falciform, Exophylla ginselmai, they produce white, yellow or black color granules. Acremonium falciform, they produce white, yellow. Pseudoescherichia bourdei, it produces white, yellow, whereas all other they produce black granules like Medulla mycetoma, Medulla grigia and Exophylla ginselmai. So this is how they indicate the causative agent which can be responsible for that particular mycetoma. Then is actinomycetoma. Under this we have bacterial causes. They are mostly white to yellow in color, and one exception is Actinomedra pelletieri, which is red or pink in color. So this is how other like Actinomedra medullae, Nocardia brasiliensis, Streptomyces somaliensis, they are white to yellow in color. Then there is a third condition which is known as botryomicosis. This is similar to mycetoma, but it is caused by bacteria, that is Staph aureus. To differentiate between the actinomycotic and eumycotic mycetoma, as I've already told you that actinomycotic is caused by the higher bacteria, filamentous bacteria, gram-positive bacilli. Eumycotic is caused by the true fungi which has hyphae. Now clinically, the tumor which is formed is a characteristic of mycetoma. Now this tumor is multiple and it has ill-defined margins in case of actinomycotic mycetoma, whereas in eumycotic it is single tumor, solitary, and it has well-defined margins. Coming to the sinuses, they appear early and are numerous in actinomycotic mycetoma, whereas in eumycotic they are few and they appear late. Discharge is purulent in actinomycotic and serious in case of eumycotic. Granules we have already covered. They are white or red and they are thin. Whereas in eumycotic, the granules are black or white and they are broad. In the bone, the actinomycotic it causes osteolytic lesion. In eumycotic, it causes osteosclerotic lesion. So it is less extensive in case of eumycotic and it is more extensive in case of actinomycotic. Example, under actinomycotic mycetoma, we have Actinomedra medullae, Nocardia, Actinomyces, Streptomyces. In eumycotic mycetoma, we have Medulla mycetomatis, Exophylla ginselmai, Aspergillus species and Fusarium species. Coming to lab diagnosis, now what would be the sample you will collect for lab diagnosis? You can take tissue biopsy or you can excise the sinus. Also, you can aspirate the serosanguinous fluid containing the granules. So what you will do is basically you will press the sinus from the periphery and the granules will be collected on a sterile gauze. The first thing, the lesion has to be sterilized. It has to be washed or it has to be cleaned by antiseptic, and then through the periphery of the sinus you will press and you will collect the granules on a sterile gauze. And then this sterile gauze, this granules has to be crushed between the slides Before that, you can also see the macroscopic examination of the granule. Usually the actinomycotic mycetoma granules, the size is smaller. It is around 0.5 to 2 millimeter in diameter. They are filamentous, but the size is smaller, whereas mycotic mycetoma, they are broader and they have septa. And they also have chlamydospore at the margins, and they are bigger. So when you will make QH mount of the grains, you have to collect the grain from the sinuses that you have to correct, and then you have to press it or crush it between the slides, and then you have to prepare the QH mount. In QH mount, eumycetoma, you will find that they are bigger, they are larger, and they are broader also, and the size is 2 to 6 micrometer, and they are hyphae with large swollen chlamydospores at the margin of the lesions. In actinomycetoma, they are filamentous, but they are of small size, and they are 0.5 to 1 micrometer in size, coccoid to bacillary form. And if you see hyphae on KH mount, then you can go for special staining, fungal staining. As we are suspecting both the bacterial and fungal causes, we have to go for gram staining. And if it shows gram-positive branching filamentous bacteria, you will see embedded in the grain material. So this shows about the etiological agent, that it is bacterial. You can also do modified acid-fast staining with 1% sulfuric acid. Here you will find pink color filamentous bacteria. Example is Nocardia species. And you can differentiate it from the actinomycetes, which is non-acid fast. So these are the important bacterial stains which help in identifying and also differentiating the bacterial causes. For the culture, we have to culture them on 2 different sets of media because of the possibilities of fungi and bacteria. When you are suspecting actinomycetoma on direct examination, then you have to wash the grain several times with normal saline. And then you have to inoculate on STA, that is Seborrheic dextrose agar, without antibiotics. And when you are suspecting eumycetoma, you have to wash the grain several times in normal saline with antibiotics and inoculate it on STA with antibiotics. The incubation is done at 25 degrees Celsius and at 37 degrees Celsius. And then you have to identify by colony morphology. Then is treatment. Usually for the treatment we give antifungal agents like miconazole, itraconazole, and surgery is also effective for the treatment of the disease. Actinomycotic mycetoma, they are very effective, or they respond well to sulfonamide, cotrimoxazole and antibiotics. But mycotic mycetoma usually requires amputation. Next is chromoblastomycosis or chromomycosis. It is a slowly progressive granulomatous infection which is characterized by formation of varicose, rough, warty cutaneous nodules which may be raised 1 to 3 cm above the skin surface. So here you will find there is a nodular lesion which is rough and warty and raised from the skin surface. This rough and irregular pedunculated vegetation, they have a typical resemblance with the florets of cauliflower. They are found primarily in the tropics and subtropics. Etiological agents of chromoblastomycosis is Francisca pedrosae and compactum, Cladosporium carione, Phylophora varicosa. All these fungi, they are collectively called as dematiaceous fungi or faired fungi, which means that they have conidia or hyphae which are dark colored and pigmented, and usually the color is grey or black. This is a clinical picture of chromoblastomycosis. You will see there are localized lesions, and here you will see the lesions are warty, they are rough, and they are like cauliflower. Can you see and appreciate the lesions? Usually They are confined, but they can also sometimes spread to brain, and this can be fatal. Laboratory diagnosis. For the laboratory diagnosis, we can do microscopy and culture, and the specimen we can take is biopsy of the tissue. We can do H&E staining, in which you will see yeast-like bodies which have transverse septum, and these bodies, this is yeast-like body and this is the transverse septum, and these are called sclerotic bodies. These colonies of these fungi, when grown on culture media, will be dark or blackish in color. Then the next is sporotrichosis. Now, sporotrichosis is a nodular ulcerating disease of skin and subcutaneous tissue, and it usually affects the hand and forearms. The infection is caused by traumatic implantation of fungus into the skin, or very rarely by inhalation into the lungs. Through the thorn pick injury, it is also known as commonly as Gardner disease, and it is more common in farmers and gardeners. They may spread through lymphatics up to regional lymph nodes and rarely beyond that. So basically they are confined to the lymphatics, and this type of presentation is called lymphocutaneous sporotrichosis. Here you will find that they would be along the lymphatics, and there would be enlargement of the regional lymph nodes, and there would be hardening of the nodes, and this will not go or progress beyond it. The first case was presented with the clinical picture of sporotrichosis were recorded by Schenk in 1898 from Johns Hopkins Hospital. Now, sporotrichosis is caused by Sporothrix schenki. The important thing about this fungus is that this is dimorphic fungus. When I say dimorphic means di is two, morphic is morphology. So it shows two type of morphologies at two different temperature. So at room temperature, that is 25 degrees Celsius, it shows the mold morphology. So it will form a mold producing branching septate hyphae along with conidia. And at 37 degrees Celsius and in the tissue, it will show the budding yeast formation. This fungus lives on plants, grass, trees and rose thorns. Sporotrichosis is commonly known as rose gardener's disease because it's most common cause of injury caused by the rose thorns and splinter injury, and it enters or infects the body by traumatic inoculation and rarely by inhalation, where there could be pulmonary lesion. Usually there is a traumatic inoculation, and mainly the presentation is lymphocutaneous, where it is confined to lymphatics and does not go beyond it. And there is a enlargement of lymph nodes and hardening of nodes. Fixed cutaneous sporotrichosis, it does not go beyond it. It is fixed there. It's not progressive. The initial lesion is granulomatous nodule that will ulcerate and become necrotic. So there would be granulomatous nodule formation with ulceration, followed by ulceration and finally necrosis. Multiple subcutaneous nodules occur along the lymphatic vesicle. So these are the clinical presentation where you will find the subcutaneous nodules are formed along the lymphatics, which will undergo ulceration and then necrosis. Can you appreciate this thing? It's more common on hand and forearm. If you can see, there is a ulceration and necrosis, and it's most commonly affecting the hand and the forearm region. This is a closer view of the same picture. Lab diagnosis. For the lab diagnosis, samples which can be collected include aspiration fluid, pus, biopsy material, skin scrapings and swabs. We can do the microscopy by doing KOH mount of specimen, and also we can do the histopathological examination of the tissue section, and further we can stain it by methanomin silver stain. The characteristic feature of this is there is a formation of asteroid body. Now what is asteroid body? It is a rounded or oval basophilic yeast-like body, 3 to 5 micrometer in diameter, which is surrounded by a rays of an eosinophilic substance which radiate from the yeast cell. So this is called asteroid body and it is specific of porotrichosis. I will show the diagram later. For culture, this fungus may not be demonstrable in pus or tissue, and therefore the culture is to be done on media and incubated at 25 degrees Celsius and 37 degrees Celsius to see the morphological forms. Serology. Serological tests are essentially helpful in the diagnosis of extracutaneous or systemic infections. We can also go for slide latex agglutination test, and by using peptido-L-rhamnodimenin as antigen. This is reliable, sensitive and specific test. So serology is also useful in the diagnosis of the porotrichosis. Now once the diagnosis is to be made by the culture by growing it on STA at 37 degrees Celsius and at 25 degrees Celsius, as it is dimorphic, two morphological forms will be seen. At 37 degrees Celsius, if you see the first picture, it shows the cigar-shaped yeast forms, cells, and on the second picture, it shows the mold form, which contains hyphae, which carries the flower-like cluster of small conidia on the delicate thin sterigmata. So this is thin sterigmata on which at the end we have a flower-like cluster of small conidia. And it produces progressive disease in rats on intraperitoneal or intratesticular inoculation. This is the same picture where you will see on Kuwait Mount. If you see, this is there are hyphae, and then we have these are the thin hyphae if you see, and then we have sterigmata, and at the end of the sterigmata you will see the cluster of conidia, flower-like cluster of conidia. This picture shows the asteroid body. Can you appreciate this in the center? The cigar bodies, they represent the elongated yeast-like forms of fungus, and when these yeast forms are surrounded by eosinophilic hyaline ray-like processes, they are referred to as sporothrix asteroids, and these are seen in the center of suppurative granulomas. So basically it is the yeast cell, that is the yeast morphological form which is seen, and it is surrounded by the radiating eosinophilic hyaline like rays, and this is because of the deposition of immunoglobulins or antigen antibody complex. In tissue, the cigar-shaped bodies would be seen, which is the yeast cell morphology, 3 to 5 micrometer in diameter. Asteroid bodies would also be seen in the lesion. So these are the central fungus cells surrounded by the refractile eosinophilic halo, and this is called Splendor-Hopfli phenomena. This is due to the deposition of immune complex around the organism. So in the center you can see there is a eosinophilic halo surrounding the yeast body, that is cigar-shaped body, and this is called Splendor-Hopfli phenomena or asteroid bodies. For the treatment, for cutaneous infection, potassium iodide can be given topically or orally. For lymphocutaneous infection, itraconazole is effective. For disseminated infection, amphotericin B is the drug of choice. The same thing, if you can understand, there is a hyphae, and then we have sterigmata, thin sterigmata. At the end of the sterigmata, we have flower-like cluster of conidia. Then we have rhinosporidiosis. It's a chronic granulomatous disease which is characterized by production of large polyps. There are large friable polyps are formed, tumors, papillomas or wart-like lesions are formed. So where it occurs, or what is the common site? Usually it is confined to the nose, mouth or eye, and rarely it is seen on other mucous membrane. So you will find there is a formation of friable polyps, wart-like lesions or tumors. And the causative agent of rhinosporidiosis is Rhinosporidium seabirei. More than 80% of the cases are from India and Sri Lanka. The mechanism of infection or mode of infection is not known, but most of the infection they occur more commonly in males, and there is always a history of frequent contact with stagnant water or aquatic life. So in the tissue, basically this fungus, it cannot be cultured, and in tissue the fungus, it produces spherules, and that possess a thick wall endospores within. So if you see this, there is a big and spherule which contains inside it endospores. For lab diagnosis, it cannot be cultured. For direct examination, fine needle aspiration cytology, biopsy of lesion and nasal washing can be done. And in this you will find there would be sporangia, which is filled with thousands of sporangiospores, 6 to 9 micrometer in size, which are embedded in stroma of connective tissue, and this is the sporangia, big sporangia with endospores, filled with endospores. Same thing, bigger view, larger view, you can see the sporangia which is embedded with the sporangiospores. So what will happen in this? These sporangiospores will burst and release the sporangia will be released, which will again form into spherules containing further more sporangiospores or endospores.